This program is rated PG and may contain mature subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised.
Organized crime, baby.
Right? Hey, let's go somebody.
I guess technically it's stealing.
If I rob this person, they'll give me whatever. But then if I go over there, I could rob that person.
Unethical ways to make money. Go to a parking garage, get one of those like uniforms, like vests, and tell people it's $5 to park there.
Yep. Somebody's waving people down to go turn there. Now you got something going. But you shouldn't aspire to be a criminal. Shouldn't aspire to be a criminal. But if you are going to be a criminal, do it right. Boys and girls, children of all ages, it is I, the diligent, vigilant, meticulous, sagacious, conscientious, analytical, methodical individual, the chiseled Adonis. But of course, you already knew that, and he is a serial entrepreneur, the Filipino Prince Tycoon, Rene Lacan, and this is Assiduous. All right, that was beautiful.
I know, man, we're getting so good at that.
Right,
so
rolls off the tongue.
Rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, I found myself saying it in the shower. I was introducing myself to the water, so that was fun.
That's weird.
Is it?
Super weird.
You don't talk in the shower?
I don't say other men's names in the shower.
Fair enough. I mean, fair enough. But do you rehearse anything in the shower? Like you're doing a webinar. You don't run the
No,
topics?
what do I think about in the shower? I think about crazy shit. I think about like how to like finesse. I think about how to like finesse the world. You know? So like right now I'm in the process of building a media company. Mm-hmm. I think that's like the next undertaking.
Okay.
Just because if we're gonna talk criminal organizations, media companies are some of the biggest criminal organizations. I was thinking about it the other day. I was live streaming on TikTok. Mm-hmm. People hate on me. Any information that comes out of my mouth, people take it with a grain of salt just because it's coming from an individual, and people automatically assume that everyone has an agenda, right? So if you're an individual, if I say, hey guys, you need to budget your money this way, you need to save your money like this, people will be like, you don't know what you're talking about, you're full of it, blah, blah, blah. But the second it comes from a media organization, right? Let's say Forbes writes an article, how you should budget your money. People read it like, oh, well, Forbes said this is how you should budget your money. It could be the exact same thing I said, but just because it came out of my mouth, people don't believe it, versus the media, which controls people's thoughts. So I'm thinking, I'm like, you know what? If I have my message and I need to push my message, my voice will only do so much. It doesn't matter if I have 1 million followers, it doesn't matter if I have 2 million followers. Some people will listen, but some people are always gonna not listen to my voice. If I have some sort of media organization that can also push my agenda or my message, then people that I normally wouldn't reach, if they don't know I'm connected to that organization, they're gonna be like, okay, cool. So right now I'm starting a media company. I'm not gonna reveal which one I own, but eventually I'll be able to start controlling the narrative, whether it's for me, other people, other entrepreneurs, anyone around the world. I'm able to shape the world around me with this media company.
So how many showers did it take for you to think about all of that? Was it in one shower? If that was the case, how long was the shower?
The seed was born in the shower. I'm like, man, I need to be able to do this. And then like you think about it through the day. So it's born in the shower. Then it incubates throughout the day. You're thinking of like, how do I do this? How do I pull this off? What would be some cool names? Et cetera, et cetera. And then I'm burping because of this energy drink. Et cetera, et cetera. And then the next time you're in the shower, it's like a second meeting. You're like, all right, so let's flesh this idea out even more. And it's just like a working idea. I'm sure when I take a shower today, it's gonna be the same thing. It's gonna be fertilizing in my brain, and eventually.
What point in the shower does the thought come into your mind?
I mean, I don't know. I'll walk in there.
Is it the first initial touch of the water, the scrubbing portion, perhaps the rinse? Where do you think it's the most optimal for when the entrepreneurial spirit is running through your mind?
I don't know how it is for other people. For me, I got hair, so like I think like don't get the hair wet.
Right.
I have to think about don't get the hair wet. I have to think about. I think it's just free flowing. It just happens.
Just free flows.
But now I'm gonna be more conscious of what I think about in the shower.
Should be, because honestly, if you were to multi-million-dollar idea in the shower, people might be more inclined to take more showers for not just recreation, not just in necessity, but perhaps so they can brainstorm.
Because when you think about it, that is the one time where you're just alone.
Right.
And people usually have like stimulation 24/7 in their life. So they don't really get time to really process and meditate on thoughts outside of the shower. So I think that's why a lot of people get a lot of good ideas in the shower.
Let's just say if you're in a relationship and your partner likes to shower alongside you, do you now tell them, get out of here, you stay dirty for an additional 15 minutes because I'm trying to think? Do you think that's something that could work well in relationships?
That's a great, have you done that before?
Oh yeah, without question.
You just tell her get out?
Oh yeah, get out of here. I got to clean myself, but also I'm thinking about
What if she
different
tells
ways
you
to
like,
take
no, I go first, you go second?
I mean, as long as I'm in the shower by myself, I think I'm all right. But then if you delay it, do I miss my window?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Because now you're pushed out, you're like, damn, the idea has to wait.
Right. Do you stay in the bathroom so you can feel or hear what's happening with the shower? I don't know. It's something to think about. Somebody needs to do a study. Right. That as well. That is true. That is true. Things to think about. Shower thoughts on how to grow a business or just do better in life. Right. But I was reading the comments. A lot of people were talking about different sort of things as it pertains to entrepreneurship, just everyday life. There was a lot of people who are, whether they're in entrepreneurship already, getting ready to start in entrepreneurship, or perhaps, there's somebody who's just regular 9 to 5, working regular job, whatever the case is, or even students who haven't quite entered the workforce. And they were talking about different sort of roadblocks that they run into. So with that being the case, it would be budgeting. Because a lot of times people talk about whether you're starting up, the right ways to start up, or if you're just working a regular job, I have no money. Everybody always says, man, I have no money, I have no funding, right?
How does your budgeting typically work? I'm curious, I wanna hear yours.
Right, so mine, and I'm gonna get there, right? So essentially, it's just a matter of budgeting, obviously, but then figuring out what are your goals, right? So I think if you know what your goals are straight out the gate, then you can budget appropriately. Because if you don't know what your plan is, now you're sitting here over here like, yeah, I'll just save this, I'll invest that much, I'll spend this much, I'll adjust my salary to this point because of all of my overhead and whatever. But if you have all this extra money that you're budgeting towards, or I should say budgeting, what are you working that money towards, right?
Facts.
So you have to first identify your goals. So for me, how my budget operates is I'll have a set amount of money that comes in. So I'll know what my gross fluctuates, because ultimately with YouTube and everything of that nature, you never know what it's really gonna be. But I immediately adjust straight out the gate. How much am I paying in rent? How much am I paying for all of my bills? All the different systems in which I have to operate in order to run the business. How much of that is going out? So immediately I have to identify what is the overhead, not only for the month, but for the year. So then immediately that money that's there, I separate it straight out of the gate. So let's just say if I was bringing in 100,000 per year, I would take a percentage, probably about like 30 to 40, just with operational costs and everything of that nature, also including the rent, utilities, travel, and then also miscellaneous. I'll always overshoot by maybe few grand for miscellaneous, because you never know, right? You just got to be safe. You take that money, you immediately remove it. So let's just say you take 40,000, throw that to the side. Then with the remaining money, how do you want to go and break that up? For me, what I do is I'll say, all right, I'll take about 40% of that, put that towards like investment accounts. So whether I'm in Acorns, Betterment, something small, high yield savings account, something that can now, the money can grow on its own with no effort from me. And then the remaining money that exists there, that would go towards like expenses and just regular everyday life. Try to live on the smallest amount of money.
Do you find yourself being pretty conservative with the way you spend money?
Oh yeah, I'm frugal. I'm frugal. I'm frugal across the board, but there are certain things in which if I have to pay more, like for example with my phone, right? I have a superior phone of 2 Androids, right? So with that being the case, I made sure
he got scammed.
I didn't want to have to underpay. What am I gonna get an iPhone? Like, come on,
who
now.
Scammed
you do that? Scammed. Oh no, the real scam is with the. Why would I want a product that's like it's portionally eaten? Somebody took a bite out of the apple. I don't want that. I want a whole of something. There's nobody biting into the Samsung logo.
Nobody's biting into anything. Samsung.
Oh, you've got to be kidding. That's such fool. And well, technically, Apple is biting off of Samsung with their operating systems and things of that.
They got Listen.
They're scheming.
It's the packaging though, bro. You have to respect the hustle and the packaging and the way they create it.
Yeah, but then what's on the inside is all Samsung.
Great example. You're a big WWE guy.
Oh yeah, of course.
I see you do WWE stuff.
Big time.
There could be a more athletic WWE fighter, more talented, but the guy that's gonna win is always the guy that comes out there and he has this brash personality and he's like talking all of this shit. He's the one that's getting paid the most. He's the one that the fans want to see. He's the one that, obviously if you have both, it's even better.
Right.
But nobody wants the poorly packaged WWE fighter. Doesn't matter how athletic he is, doesn't matter how he performs, doesn't matter if he could do a double backflip off the freaking ropes. If he can't appease a crowd, if he can't talk, he's not packaged well, he doesn't have his shtick, the audience is not going to fuck with them.
You're absolutely correct. That's exactly
the
why
idea.
Samsung's packaging and everything of that nature is so much more superior. I appreciate you making the argument for me, because the person who's somewhat poor in that particular, degree, who can somewhat connect with the audience but can't seem to drive them home. That's the Apple product. But we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about budgeting. So with that being the case, I try to live below my means.
That's why you bought a Samsung.
Right? Right. Oh, Jesus, here we go again. Here we go again. I'm not having a good time. This slander of Samsung product. But, you have to live below your means. So then for the people who are out there in the comment section, the people who are wondering different ways in which they can navigate, with a budget, that's one of the ways that you could do it. So you make sure you identify what your goals are, and then you adjust your salary or whatever the case may be. Immediately separate the funds that go towards any type of, systems, utilities, your living expenses, and miscellaneous. You put that all together, separate that immediately from your salary, then take a large portion of the remainder that exists, put that towards investments, and then the last smaller percentage, you put that and allocate it towards your everyday sort of expenses. And then of course you have to stay on target with your goal. But then what do you do for your budget?
My budget is very interesting. I think I have it's like a 10, 20, 30, 40 rule. And I think a lot of people follow this rule. I think it's the easiest for me because I'm not really too stringent about my budget. I'm not really conservative when I spend. I'm pretty crazy when I spend. I'll spend money. I'll splash money on anything. Listen, if I get a little alcohol on me, listen, it's time to spend. We'll go to casino, we'll blow a couple racks. But the way I look at it, what I've been trying to follow at least, you're gonna go 40% into investing, right? And it could be a variety of investment. It could be low risk, high risk, right? It could be a stock, it could be a real estate property, it could be my business. I look at content as investment, right? Like paying producers, paying editors. I think that's an investment in your business. So 40% of whatever I make for a month is gonna go into investing, business, content, stocks, real estate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the biggest portion of my money is gonna go into investing, right? And I think anyone should do that. Education, they should invest in their education, books. That's technically investing, right? So investing is very broad for me, but anything that makes me better or gives me an opportunity to make more money, plant little seeds of wealth, that's 40% of my budget. 30% of my budget goes to just saving and putting it away for a rainy day. Because I'm not a big fan of saving. I think you should spend all your money as much as possible. But at the end of the day, most people have less than $5,000 in the bank, which is crazy. Like I think about that one time, like what if something happens to you? You're fucked, bro. Like if you get a flat tire on your car breaks down. You're done. That's it, your life is over. So the fact that you have, it's over. So the fact that you have less than $5,000 in the bank, like what, you just die? And any emergency happens, you just die. That's like your option, that's your choice.
That's interesting, because you separate investment and then saving. I consider saving as a portion of investment. That's why I'll always mention, like with saving with like the, whether it be like a small investment account or you put in like a high yield saving, I always put investment and saving together, but you have it separate. That's interesting.
Yeah, so the way I look at saving, it's a closed ecosystem. And when I say a closed ecosystem, this is gonna be really, really deep, advanced terminology. Yeah, so the business heads are gonna love this.
Yeah, make sure you sit down when you hear this.
And investing is an open ecosystem where it can grow, it can die. Like if you look at a forest, right? Sometimes the forest grows, but sometimes there's wildfires and the forest dies. So for the most part, forests tend to grow. That's the way I look at investing. Saving is a closed ecosystem.
No risk.
There's no risk, but there's a lot of risk because outside, like the government and stuff, but that's even more complicated. Saving is a closed ecosystem. You don't lose money, but you don't gain money from saving. So saving is strictly there just to give you peace of mind, right? Because if all your money is invested, depending on what you're invested in, you're not really gonna have peace of mind because you're like, shit, you're gonna be watching your saving or your investments 24/7.
Because that's your cash reserve that's being played with there.
So if you have a savings separate from your investments, now your investments can grow and you're not worried about it, then you have the savings to keep you protected. In case anything happens, you're like, you know what, I got some cash, I could throw at that. I'm not worried, my rent's paid, my bills are paid. If anything happens, I'm good. So that's kind of like the secondary. So 40% investing, open ecosystem, 30% closed ecosystem just to protect me. 20% is living expenses. So, and that would mean rent and food. Living expenses, rent, food, travel. Travel as in like Ubers and stuff. So that's like living expenses. And then 10% goes on luxury. Because I do think that there's something to be said about rewarding yourself for all the hard work you do. If I work really, really hard and I make $1 million this month, I'm blowing $100,000 on something. I don't know what it is yet. I'll take a PJ to the Bahamas. I'll buy myself a Lamborghini or something. If I clear $1 million in a month, 10% of that's going to myself.
Interesting. So that
Treat yourself,
you have the luxury because I also put I put the luxury portion in the like the overhead. So that's like my miscellaneous area because I think if I separate it ahead of time in the year, I can project how much I'll be able to like spend.
Yeah.
But then if you have it separate to where you say, hey, you know, I can work my way towards it and earn it. I always put it ahead of time so I know there's like somewhat of a cap on it, I guess.
I think for me, I don't want to put a cap on it because if there's a cap on it, then it's like, oh, no matter what. Let's say I wanted a jet really badly, right?
Right.
I don't. It's kind of like investment. Let's say I wanted, I don't know, a Gucci shirt really badly.
Okay.
That's a weird one. But let's say I wanted a Gucci shirt. Oh no, a Rolex. I wanted a Rolex really badly. I don't want to be like, damn, it's gonna take me a year to get it. I want to be like, okay, I can get it next month. I just have to make 300 grand this month, and I could spend 30 grand on bullshit. You know, that's the way I look at it. So I think there's something to be said about rewarding yourself because it tricks your dopamine system into like, let me work harder so I could have that 10% that I could spend on myself.
Right. So that so it's almost for you as the year progresses, you can work your way towards it.
Yes.
So then you say, hey, if I made this amount this month, I can treat myself this percentage of money. I do it like backwards because I look at it from like the everyday person who's working the regular 9 to 5 and you're just getting by, or even depending on whatever your salary may be. I think if you put it ahead of time, you put yourself in a situation where you're not constantly chasing after it.
Right.
But I think it works that way as well because on a daily basis, or maybe not daily, but on a weekly monthly basis, you can see, oh wait, my projection is here, so I can play with this amount. So you give yourself a floor. So I like the idea. This works.
So I think depending on your personality, you could do it. So that's what I try to do, and I think that works at any level too. Let's say you only make $5 grand a month. The fact that you could spend $500 on luxury. I don't know, going to what can you buy $500?
Get a good dinner. Like if you have a dinner for one, then you can have a good dinner for one for $500. And even if you had a dinner for two, because you don't have to go to the most expensive place, you can just go find different exquisite locations, try something small, because it doesn't always have to be dinner. It could be you go to like a ice cream shop or something like that. Experiences, you can go to a game or something like that, like Messi's in Miami.
A nice,
go to a game.
Go to a soccer game, right?
Right.
$500 on a ticket, that'll get you a pretty good ticket for a game. So that's a great example of luxury. Right? So it's like, it motivates you to make more. That way you feel better about it. So that's kind of how I do my breakdown. I think all of it pieces together. I think if you're investing most of your money, it continues to grow. If you're saving enough, it gives you peace of mind. If you're keeping your living expenses at 20%, it gives you enough money to do everything else, but it allows you to live a comfortable life. And then the last final 10% is on luxury. It rewards you because you need to stimulate your dopamine system somehow, right? By not rewarding yourself, by continuing to hold it in, you lose motivation.
Right.
But the second you give yourself a little like a dog, if you tell him to do something, he does it for a while, but if you're not giving him a treat after he does it, he's gonna stop. So human beings, we're animals in the same way, that if you give yourself a treat every once in a while, you're like, ooh, when you continue to pursue that behavior where you get that treat.
Right. I always look at it as like it's a release. You know, so you need that. You need that in order to keep going. And everybody has their different sort of stuff. And for the people who are constantly like they're in the rat race, right? And you can't seem to figure out what it is that you're into. That's where that percentage of money can go towards. Find out what you like. Take that salsa class. Go to that game. Perhaps go to that dating event. Go to that restaurant. Try different activities to figure out what it is that you're into, because you don't want to be that person who you're having that midlife crisis because you have no clue who you are or what you're actually interested in.
I think the issue with a lot of people though, and this is why it goes down to just making more money. The issue with a lot of people, I said this on my live stream, I shared my budget, and people were saying like, oh, it's impossible because I'm living check to check. So their living expenses are 90% of what they make already. And the issue there, it's like, one, you're either living way too much, right? You're living by yourself when you should have a roommate. You are spending way too much like, here's a great example. Someone lives in California, your rent's gonna be expensive.
Oh yeah.
Someone lives in Miami, your rent's gonna be expensive. Move to freaking Texas. Move to Omaha, Nebraska. You know, your rent's gonna get cut in half, if not a quarter. Then you can get closer to that number. It's either that's one option. The other option is you start a business, you start making more money. Those are the two options you have as far as
Or you pick up another job, that too, but then you'll have lower amount of time, but then you'll actually increase, your wages and your income. So
the tough part about getting a job is like you run out of energy.
That is true.
Energy and time are finite, and then like I think if you work so many hours, eventually you just start to burn out.
But then you will burn out.
Burnout is real.
But if you tell yourself, and that's why it's important to plan as well, because if you now have that budget planning, you can say, all right, I'll pick up another job, but I'll only work for a set period of time. Because a lot of times people will pick up 2 jobs, they're burning themselves out, they have no goal in mind. And I love how you brought up, all right, you say you're living in a certain location, your living expenses are so astronomically high, whatever money that you have remaining, you can't do anything with it. So then you're now like, okay, it's impossible to try to have a percentage go towards luxury. Well, have you ever considered the fact that maybe your luxury can be taken into account a year down the line? You just have to sacrifice now. Like everything with the budgeting plan, you're not gonna always be able to take advantage of it immediately. Sometimes you'll have to wait. And it goes back to what we talked about a few episodes back where we were talking about, well, you have to work your way towards earning that vacation, earning that luxury meal, earning that luxury event.
Well, anything nice in life is always earned.
It's always earned.
Anything nice in life is always earned. There's no sort of luxury that's free. And that's just the
everything
fact
comes
of
at a
life,
cost.
right? Like
everything comes at a cost.
Everything comes at a cost. Here's a great example, right? I think being able to eat junk food is a luxury. It's a luxury, but how do you earn that luxury? You earn it by working out a bunch. Because let's say you're someone that has a 6-pack, you're 10% body fat, you can afford a luxury of going and eating McDonald's, splurging, right? That's a luxury you've earned. So I think it correlates to every aspect of your life.
You create the wiggle room that exists there. And then the people who are living paycheck to paycheck, set up a plan, identify what your goals are at that point, and say, all right, if I pick up another job, how much more money will I have at the end of the year? Then, if it's a proximity issue from wherever it is that you reside, you might have to get that culture shock. You might have to go somewhere else. You might have to downsize. If you're living in this house now, if you're somebody who's a family person, you have children, you have a spouse, whatever the case is, you have to now be honest with yourself. What kind of life do you want to lead for not only yourself, but then also your offsprings, for your spouse, whatever the case is? Identify those goals, budget accordingly. If you not have to have that uncomfortable conversation like, hey, honey, these purses, you're gonna have to cut down. If you're gonna have to, if she's the breadwinner and she's like, he's at stay at home, that, hey, listen, these gaming consoles, you're gonna have to, cut down or whatever the case is, or you're gonna have to go downsize. Maybe with your children, if there's a particular extracurricular activity, no disrespect for the, you wanna have your children in as many possible scenarios so where they can try different things, but if you have to cut down on them playing football or them being part of the basketball team or something like that for a small set period of time, you got to do what you got to do to get to the goals in which you want to go. So then for the people who are at the paycheck to paycheck, identify a goal, set up the budget, and even if there's a cutoff period, just say if it's 12 months, 12 months or 36 months, you just say, all right, I'm going to grind for this period of time, and then the payoff will come after the fact.
And a big part of that too is you have to figure out what your non-negotiables are.
Right.
And you have to adjust your either how much you make or your budget to that. If your non-negotiable is, hey, me and my wife need to go on a date every single week, you better make more money in order to make that possible.
Exactly.
Because something has to give. You can't have everything. Something is always going to have to give. So it's either you choose to make more money, right? Or you choose to give up that date night, but you can't have it both ways.
Right.
So that's why when I say pick your non-negotiables, you have to determine what's important to you. Because you said, like, for me, my kids are going to do activities, no doubt in my mind, right? They're going to do martial arts, they're going to play sports, they're going to do this stuff. I'm always going to have them in that.
Right.
And I refuse to negotiate on that because I think it builds like culture in the kids. It builds like a sense of responsibility, a sense of duty, a sense of discipline. So that's going to be non-negotiable. I'm always going to make sure I have enough money to do that. But going to that, like, how meticulous are you when it comes to your budget? Are you super stringent and like stick to it really well, or do you like tend to say, yeah, whatever? Or are you like,
when I first started,
do you monitor all your spending?
I used to, because when I first started, and I created my YouTube channel and everything like that, the first 3 years I lived off of $13,000 and a $10,000 credit limit. That was it.
How much?
It was $13,000
a year.
Yeah, no, it was like total. Like for 3 years, I didn't spend more than 10K. Like if my mom didn't cook, I didn't eat. If my dad didn't drive me somewhere, I had to bike there, and then I didn't really go out. I still did activities, but I paid, like, it was ridiculous because I knew, hey, I'm working towards something. So if I have to sacrifice, but somehow still in that summer of 2016, I was always out. but I made sure I was able to do it on a budget. And then I paid myself back in time because I said, all right, this entire summer I'll do certain activities, but in the winter I'm not going out. I'm a hermit. I'm inside, right? So I sacrificed and understood what the goal was because I was working towards something. So I was incredibly anal about the budget at that time. Now there's a bit more wiggle room, but I have still been monitoring to where it's like, okay, I've been spending too much here. I got to cut down on this. Like a lot of people don't like to look at their bank account because if you're living paycheck to paycheck, or if there's not a right amount of money that's in there, you're like, I kind of want to stay away from it.
They don't want to see like the little number, you know?
Right. You don't want to see that number. So I always tell myself there's like a particular kind of benchmark. If I fall below this, I'm in trouble. So I got to make sure that I stay above that and I stay on top of it. Like I'll go and I'll look at my account. I'll say, all right, I got to make sure I have this at this particular number. If I've been spending, I'll look at like my monthly or maybe even quarterly report and I'll say, okay, I got to cut down on this. I had too much spending on that. So,
you know, it's so funny you said that. I think it's a sense of denial too. People like are scared to like see the reality of their life.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about it earlier. The game of life, right? Money is just how you keep score.
Yeah.
So people say money doesn't count, money isn't everything. I wouldn't say money is success. But if there was a way to keep score, like a quantifiable way to keep score, money is how you keep score in life.
Yeah.
It's how you keep score of your success. Regardless of who you are, it doesn't matter, like, a good example, Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama's net worth is $150 million. What the fuck?
Huh?
His goal was not money, but the money just, it's a byproduct of like helping people following your passion. If you were doing YouTube videos for free, because you were doing it for free at some point, and now the money's just following it. So money is how you keep score, it's how you keep track. I think people don't want to look at their score in life because they're not doing so well, right? Because I know for me, sometimes I don't like looking at my bank account either. I feel the same way, right? Regardless of how much money I have, I think the standard I've set for myself is so much higher now. So like, if I look at it and there's less than 6 figures in there, I'm like, ooh.
Yeah.
You know, and it made me think of something. Drake said it, because it's how I feel also. It's a weird bar, but he said something like, my dick got hard because a wire just hit.
Yeah. That money come in, hey, you start moving different.
I feel the same way. When I get a big, when something big hits my account, I see it, I'm like, whoo, boy.
Yeah, you start feeling yourself.
You start feeling good.
Right, because you don't want to be in a situation where you look at your account, it's like, oh boy, man, what the hell am I doing, you know? Yeah. And that's going to happen at certain points, because like me right now, I know these last 2 years have all just been a matter of prepping and planning. Yeah. So I've been spending more in like these last 2 years, just so I know in 5 years I can fly because everything else will be set up. So with that being the case, I'm like, all right, I expect things to be a bit lower, but I was already planning for it. Yeah. If you're somebody with no plan, you're in a situation where it's like, oh boy, my account is down. I don't know why. I kind of don't want to look at my statements because it's going to expose me to all the terrible decisions that I since made. So you got to make sure you're on top of that type of stuff. You know, it's incredibly important.
Yeah, I think, and it's weird too, because you're always going to set a new standard for yourself. I think making a lot of money really fast really set me up for disappointment, to be honest, because when you like catch a hit like that, you make a lot of money really fast. Everything after that's going to feel mediocre. Right? Because let's say 1 month I'm making $7 grand a month, but the next month I do 150 grand. Any jump, like let's say, and then after I do 150 grand, I go back down to 50. I'm going to feel sad that I'm only making 50 grand a month. Yeah. Because of the peak that I set. You know, I think for me, my all-time like record month for myself personally, I did like $240,000 in 1 month. That went straight to my bank account. $250,000 in a month.
Oh, net.
Yes.
Yeah, because a lot of people, they have to quantify between net and gross.
The business did millions of dollars that month. I cleared $250,000 in 1 month.
Beautiful.
And I was looking at that the other day. I was like, fuck. And I looked, and that I've never really been able to hit that again, which is why I've been real motivated lately. I've been texting you at 4 a.m. like, let's go, let's do this. Even today when you got here, I had stuff on the whiteboard. But once you set that standard, everything feels mediocre. And the more I think about it, the more it hurts my soul. Like I could look at something, I made 70 grand in a month and I feel real shitty because I'm like, oh, you
didn't reach what you used to.
Yeah, like I'm making 20% of what I used to do, which is ridiculous. So I think one big thing, like if you do it the right way and you build it correctly, and you have this constant like increase, that's where it feels good.
And then you have to have the understanding of what it's all about in the grand scheme of things. Because once you get that peak, And then it's like, oh man, I'm at the highest I've ever been at. You know there's gonna be a down, but then when the down comes, it sucks.
Yeah.
So it's like you're on a roller coaster, you're on the way up. It's like, all right, oh, this is cool. You have all the anticipation. And then when the down goes, you're like, oh, I want to kill myself. This is brutal.
And the thing is, like, if you look at, because I have to think about it in perspective, I have to zoom out a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm upset about $70,000 a month. I used to make $7,000 a month.
Right.
So what am I upset about, really?
Yeah, perspective, it's important. And I think that's why you have to write it. If you write everything down and then you have it in front of you. Because just like that same scenario, somebody who's making, or I should say at the end of all their expenses or whatever, they're probably going home with, let's just say, an extra 1,000, maybe 500 to extra 1,000. Then they could pick up that additional job or whatever the case is for that set period of time. Now you're coming home with maybe 2,000, maybe 1,500, more than what you had.
They feel good about it.
You feel good. But then once you reach that point and you start to set up the systems, you go and you get that house. Maybe you get that car. Maybe you get that new account or whatever the case is. Or maybe you buy those new clothes. You go on that trip or whatever it is. Now, when you look at how much you're bringing in on a monthly basis, like, oh boy, what the hell am I doing? This is brutal. But you have to understand, if you have it all in front of you, let's just say you have a whiteboard, maybe you have all of your statements in front of you, whatever the case is, you can say, oh no, this happened because of this, and I know it was gonna go down. But if you don't look at any of that,
you're blind.
You're blind.
You're blind.
You're blind, and you're gonna hate yourself.
You have to address the truth of the situation. I think a big part of it boils down to self-awareness.
Right.
It's being okay with saying, like, I suck. Because a lot of people, most of the time, they refuse to accept, like, maybe I just suck, you know? And I look at numbers to quantify all of that. I look at my YouTube views, right? I'm big on, like, looking at, I'm not even good with numbers. If you put math in front of me, I suck. I'm not that type of Asian, different type of Asian. But I'm big at looking, like, at views. Like, I could tell, like, oh, this has 1 million, this has 50,000. This is probably worse content-wise than this. So I'll do a good job of, like, looking at stuff and being like, okay, this is not the best. I could be better, or maybe I just suck at this. And I think that's what people need to start doing. They start looking at their bank account, looking at their score in the video game of life, and saying, you know what? I don't have a high score in this video game of life. I need to get my score higher.
Yeah, and I think they should be honest to the point where it's like, maybe I don't have it all figured out and I need help.
And that's a good segue to me using the restroom.
Yeah, because I should say to the people out there, never feel as if, it's like the solo moment. Never feel as if you can figure everything out on your own. Sometimes you need a little bit of help. Maybe you got to go see a financial advisor. Maybe you got to go and have an honest conversation with your family, or maybe your friends, or somebody who you revere about where it is that you are in life. Perhaps you need to go get advice on things, advisory from somebody, so that you know what direction you want to go in. Go and sit down, speak to somebody about your finances, and then that way you can make the adjustment necessary so you can get to where it is that you want to go. I understand that everybody's not an entrepreneur, everybody's not an entertainer, everybody's not a musician, whatever the case may be. Even if you're working the regular job, you're making ends meet, you're taking care of your family, you still have to make sure you have a budget in place so that nothing falls completely out of whack. Have your cash reserves, but also have the money that's there to invest so you could possibly make some moves down the line. Have that savings to where, all right, if things were to fall apart for 6 months to a year, you have some money that's there. I recognize it's not always going to be easy. There's going to be moments in which you may be at a deficit, or whatever the case may be. Just make sure that you have a plan in place so that when the time does come, you have an option that takes care of that. So, and of course, I'm pretty sure in the background, somebody can hear Renee peeing, but we're not talking about that right now. One way or another, make sure that you have a plan in place so when the time does come, you are prepared.
Oh.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
That was fire. I don't even know what you said, but that was a banger. Banger. Yeah, I think ultimately at the end of the day, it's just accountability. We talk about this stuff a lot on this podcast, but it's true. I'm happy that we can share budgets though, because I think everyone lives a little differently.
Yeah.
Why do you think that you're able to live? Because I think most people have this issue of lifestyle inflation.
Right.
Right? They start making more money and their lifestyle inflates. And it doesn't matter who you are. Like, you could be a college student, you're living off bare minimum, and then you become an engineer, right? You graduate college, you become an engineer. Now you buy a BMW, you get yourself a little nice apartment, you start doing this stuff, and you're still living check to check. So why do you think that you've been able to, like, remain relatively conservative with your money?
Oh, I'm not chasing status.
Okay.
Because I'm looking at it like, for somebody who now elevates, let's just say if you were a college student, because of course as you grow in life, you'll get to different stages and you try different things, because I know who I am, I know what I like, I know what I enjoy. Now there'll be certain sort of moments in which I'd like to indulge in different sort of stuff, but that's like the small dopamine hitting, and I don't let it affect the grand scheme of things.
Right.
But for me, I've always said, all right, there's a particular type of way that I'd like to live my life at different stages as I continue to grow. And although tomorrow's not promised, I operate as if it is, but I make sure I don't sacrifice, today and not really take advantage of today. So I don't try to procrastinate or put stuff off, but I make sure that I tell myself, all right, cool. If I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do this, it's working towards that. So everything that I do is working towards like 5 years down the line. I try not to set it up to where just today, this is everything right here. So as I continue to elevate, I made more money or whatever the case is, I always looked at it like, you know what, let me not try to go and purchase this car. Let me not try to constantly try to fly, whether it be first class everywhere. Oh, I'm on a plane for 30 minutes. Let me go fly first class and spend the next. What's the purpose of that? Makes no difference for me. So with that being the case, I keep myself grounded. Other people, they're trying to chase that status. So they'll say, hey, I'm making 100,000 now. I'm making 80,000. I'm making 150. I'm making 250. I should be living this particular kind of way. So you can elevate your wardrobe, but then if you're constantly just changing stuff always, you'll end up finding yourself in a situation where you're still breaking even, despite the fact that you've gone up in wages significantly.
It's weird. I think it's a combination of things too. I don't know if it's necessarily just status, because I think I see a lot of guys lose a lot of money because of girls.
Right, but then
I've
the
seen
status
guys,
of having a bunch of girls around, it's the same thing.
Well, not even having, like, I've seen guys spend, like, let's say they go to the bar, every weekend they go to the bar, they spend $300 buying girls drinks and stuff. It's like, do you think that's status? Do you think they're trying to get laid?
Because what's the dopamine effect that you get from buying all these girls, drinks or whatever? You walk in and you feel like a baller.
Well, I think they do it. No, but they're not buying bottles though. They're doing it strictly to like try and get laid.
Right.
That's my point.
But then if you do it to try to get laid, what does that make the woman look at you like? If you're just sending a bunch of, it's the same thing. It's all just a matter of status.
Yeah.
Like for example, with watch.
Yeah.
Like what's the time right now? If you had the time,
phone.
like what time is it right now?
1:07.
Right. That's free.
Yeah.
Right? That's free. You don't need a watch.
iPhone was actually like $1,200.
Oh, really? Well, whatever the case is. But still, if you were buy a Timex versus a Rolex,
right?
But the Rolex comes with status. You see somebody who got that Rolex on, it's like, oh, wait a minute, this dude, he must have something going on. You start conversation like first class. I flew from Texas back to New York first class, but I didn't fly there first class. Oh, I did it on points. Come on now. But basically, while I was there, I struck up conversation, and when I was at DreamCon, it was the most I ever got recognized. It was 230 people.
Flags.
It was dope.
2 times flags.
Yeah, I took like 200 photos. It was awesome. I loved the experience. But when I was flying back, a couple of people who was also going to New York, they recognized me as well. The guy who was sitting next to me, he's like, so what do you do? And we sparked up conversation, right? I could have looked at that like, oh man, I'm the dude. Let me just fly first class everywhere. But I recognized, no, that's not the case. Have the conversation, move on with it. I don't feel like I have to be addicted to that dopamine hit. Despite how cool it was, I kept myself grounded. Other people, they'll be like, oh no, this must be a product of me being in first class. So now I'm only gonna fly first class. I'll always have conversations with people who's next to me. And I know the people who are next to me will be higher level status. I can go and converse with them. Perhaps I can network and then I can get to where I wanna go. So it's the same thing where you're chasing after status. So the person who's buying the drinks at the bar, because of the feeling that the women give them, and you have that, they look at me as I'm worthy of wanting to be with them, rather than just going and sparking up conversation without having to spend any money. You're chasing after that status.
Right, I understand that. I think I'm still caught in that trap, to be honest. I think it affects every person a little bit differently.
Right.
If I could go back in time, I wish I could have built a brand a little bit different. But now because I'm stuck in that, right, penthouse, travel around, do.
You're not necessarily stuck. I don't think that you're necessarily stuck, because if you can always make an adjustment, all while still dealing with it.
Yeah, but then my life gets miserable, of like, so here's a good example. Like I order really expensive food. Like I'll get like a bunch of steak, sushi.
Right, Wagyu.
I'll order lamb chops from like a Michelin star restaurant, just because I'm hungry. It'll be like $100 a meal, $200 a meal.
Okay.
I'm fucking stuck, bro. If I had to go back, I could do it. I'd be miserable though.
Miserable due to quality, or perhaps like that dopamine effect of, I can spend this money and not have to worry about it?
Combination of both.
Okay.
Combination of both, because I think once you have something really good, it's hard to go back. It's hard to go back.
It is.
Because When I was broke, I was eating like cup noodle all the time. Like it was cheap, but now when I can order whatever I want and I have the flavors in my mouth, it's just so much better. So I think once you get used to a certain standard of living, your lifestyle changes and it's hard. You kind of like get yourself in a trap.
I think if you were to slowly incorporate those like humble beginnings into maybe not the day to day, but maybe week to week, like you start very small for like, all right, once in every, like bi-weekly, maybe once or twice, you can have those cup noodles. You'll have like, all right, there's a cup noodle day. Or spontaneously, because if you put it on a board, like, all right, twice this week, I must have cup noodles. That's all I'm eating all day. It's gonna feel like you're dreading that day.
I agree to that, but I also think that the level of work that would take, if I just put that level of work into me making more money, I could then just make more money.
No, correct. But then if, let's just say if you're hungry, let's say if you were to buy like cup noodles, you leave it inside your pantry, whatever the case is, right? And then, oh, I'm hungry. Instead of ordering, I'll heat up the cup noodles. And while you're eating it, in that moment, it's like, oh, man, this kind of sucks, but then it reminds you of how far you since come. So that can keep you grounded. Because if you're in a situation where it's not around you or something, now you'll just, all right, I'll keep ordering or whatever the case is. So that's a good way to where you don't feel. Right, so because if you were to do the ultimate shift, like for example, if you used to have a BMW, it was an i8, right?
Yeah.
Right, and then let's just say, what was your first car?
Mazda Miata.
Right, so let's just say you bought a Mazda Miata, right? And then you also have the i8 that's there. Oh, I'll just occasionally drive this Mazda. If they're both there, you're like, man, fuck this shit. Why would I ever want to drive this if I have the other option? So you start small. You could just do the noodles here and there, and then it won't feel as if, I'm miserable. You just slowly ingratiate those humble beginnings. So as you climb, you still stay grounded, because it's going to be incredibly difficult. Like imagine you travel like with your girl, you go different sort of places. Maybe when you order in, or maybe you'll go out, you'll go to different sort of places, whatever the case is. But if you were to say, hey, let's go get to this like small mom and pop that doesn't have too much going on. Maybe it's a startup location. You're just eating the food's terrible or whatever. It will be a huge shock to where it sucks in that moment, but then it can also take you back hey, it'll rewire you to, all right, this is why I worked so hard to get to this point. Because if you now detach and it's no longer relatable to you, you'll find yourself in that cycle of chasing after it. And then now you'll be in a problem.
That is great advice.
Yeah. So ultimately, for everybody who is out there, make sure that you have a proper budget, right? Set up a plan first with goals. Then you have your budget, you work your way towards, or I should say through the budget, you stay on top of that. And even if you have to sacrifice for a set period of time, make sure you set that set period of time. Don't just, all right, well, I'm gonna pick up this second job. And now that's when you get that burnout. So make sure that you're on top of things. Proper planning, all right? Because what is the saying? It's like the people who fail to plan to fail. Yeah, so make sure that you plan that budget, then you work accordingly so that down the line, whether it be a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever the long-term or short-term may be, you have the proper plan so that your budget is on point. And then of course, stay grounded as you ascend so you don't mess around and lose everything that you worked for immediately. Right. You have any final thoughts?
I mean, no, man, you slam dunk that.
Oh, beautiful.
I feel like you think about this stuff a lot.
Oh, yeah, it runs through my mind.
Yeah, because you think, does your brain move relatively quickly?
Yeah, I'm a thinker.
You're a thinker?
Yeah, I'm a thinker. Because ultimately, like, entrepreneurship is a thinking man's game. And my entire life is just a matter of, I'd always ask why.
Do you think it's just a thinking man's game? Because I think people that overthink, right? It's analysis or paralysis by overanalysis.
Analysis paralysis, something like that.
Yeah, it's paralysis by overanalysis. And they'll sit there and they'll think, but they'll never take action.
Yeah, you don't execute. It's thinking and execution.
I think it's a combination of people that think and execute. Right.
It's more because ultimately for me, and I think thinkers, I also think executors as well, but then ultimately there's people who are just trapped in their mind.
So if I were to rank the three, right? There's the thinkers and executors. Then there's the executors that don't really think.
Right.
And then there's the people that just think. So, and my best way to do it, let's say you have a direction. Let's say our job is to get to this island over here, right? The thinkers are gonna think about ways to do it, but they're never gonna do it. They're never gonna make any progress. Right. The people that execute are like, man, I'm just gonna fucking swim. And they'll just start swimming. Some will die, but some will make it. If 100 people swim, maybe 10% will make it. So I think the executors have a better shot at becoming successful as an entrepreneur than the strictly thinkers. But the ones that really win are the ones that think about a plan. They think, okay, well, I'm gonna swim from that part over there because it's a shorter distance. And then I'm gonna take a break here because there's shallow land, and I'm gonna do this. The thinkers and executors, the thinkers that take action are the ones that accomplish it very, very quickly and effectively. So I think you're a combination of both.
Yeah.
I don't think you're necessarily just a thinker, because I see how much content you put out. You put out a massive amount of content, and it's like you only do that by execution.
Right.
You know? I think a lot of people have issues. Execution is scary because that's where the risk is involved. Thinking is hard because it involves a lot of brain power.
Yep.
So very few people can accept the difficulty and the fear of both thinking and action. That's everything involved in business.
Yeah, 100. That's a perfect way to put it. Thinking and execution.
I know,
Thinking
man.
and execution. Saying I don't have any closing thoughts. You kidding? That was profound.
No,
there.
but
people
yeah.
are crying.
Yeah.
And I think I've never heard something so profound in my life. Like, you're changing lives here. That's what we do here at Assiduous. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, once again, I am the diligent, vigilant, meticulous, sagacious, conscientious, analytical, methodical individual, the Chisel Adonis. He is a serial entrepreneur, the Filipino Prince
Tycoon!
Rene Lacade, and we are
Assiduous. How long was that?